Back in 2016, during the heyday of console competitive multiplayer shooters just completely dominating the market, a pretty unique game called Titanfall 2 came out. The problem was that, honestly, Titanfall 2 pretty much flew under the radar. It never really got its chance to really thrive and succeed or anything like that, and quite frankly just went out with a bit more of a whimper and a whisper. I'm not even exaggerating when I say that I bought my original copy of Titanfall 2 from the dollar store for $2.99 for Xbox One, only a couple years after it had already launched. And this was especially surprising because in this wave of all of these different shooters, multiplayer stuff going on all of the time, Titanfall 2 came out and was generally favorably rated good by critics. And even to this day, like every now and then when I'm listening to gaming media, whether or not it's podcasts or videos, people will just throw in the fact that Titanfall 2 is an extremely good video game. Well, it's now 2025 and I picked up Titanfall 2 yet again on PC this time because I wanted to investigate the game thoroughly. I played a lot of the multiplayer when I first got it on Xbox One, but I wanted to dissect the entire game to figure out, well, is this the forgotten masterpiece that everyone has kind of been hyping it up to be, or was it rightfully given that $2.99 price tag at Dollarama all those years ago? My name is Marks, and well, I am very happy to report back that yes, Titanfall 2 is a masterpiece, so let's get right into why this game is so gosh darn good. Alright, so a brief history about Titanfall 2. Like I said in the introduction there, it is the direct sequel from the original Titanfall. What's really unique about this franchise is that it boasts all types of crazy movement. I mean, the parkour in this game is spectacular, but of course the most important thing is that you go from the little parkouring pilot into these massive hulking titans, where your mobility is a lot more reduced, but you got all sorts of crazy arsenal and weaponry and armor, and you can do really cool Titan v Titan combat. I would even make the argument to say that Titanfall really ushered in that whole wave of shooters that really were inspired by sci-fi futuristic settings where, you know, you got some sort of mech kit attached to your person that allowed you to fly around. I genuinely think that Titanfall was really what popularized that and honestly turned it into an entire genre on its own. But what I think really elevates Titanfall 2 into the status of a masterpiece is actually its single player campaign. So hear me out here for a second, because really, for these games, you don't expect the single player to be something that's good, or you expect the story of these types of single player campaigns to be what carries it forwards. But I'm gonna tell you now, the Titanfall 2 campaign story is almost as generic as you can possibly get. It's kind of like this fun buddy cop story with, you know, we're stopping the end of the world, stopping this, like, you know, Death Star style weapon type of thing. But what made it interesting was each level was so unique and so well designed that even though it was just a linear shooter experience, everything was just a little bit more interesting. First and foremost, the first time I was really wowed was when you were going through this whole factory level and you're maneuvering through this factory where they're building these blocks of like this fake neighborhood, and it culminates in this arena battle where all of the different platforms that you've been kind of parkouring through get smushed together and creates this intense fake neighborhood where you get to have this massive battle. And to me, that was so cool because, like, you know, you got to see the entire process that led up to this massive climax, all contained within a pretty short level. And of course, another one, the classic that everyone is going to point to, is the level Effect and Cause, which introduces a time traveling mechanic as you explore this IMC facility. Now, essentially, you're going through this and you have to parkour through all of these abandoned hallways, but of course things are going to be blocked off. So hey, let's just head back to the past before everything got destroyed and suddenly we can go through. And as you're going through this level, these sequences are so creative and so unique. Just at the click of a button, you can traverse between these two different time periods in order to go through the entire level. The fact that you can wall run on one side and then jump off, time travel in the middle of your jump to land onto another platform to continue wall running and then bouncing back and forth. I mean, that is something really cool, and I don't think that I've seen any other modern video game really incorporate that concept to the level that Titanfall 2 had really achieved. And then another level as well, when you're traversing across all of these different satellite parts in order to repair a satellite, and you just see this endless sky like reaching out in front of you with all of these drop ships kind of coming in and dropping things off, all while you're just trying to parkour around, shoot the enemies in your way, and make it to your objective. There is so much creativity and variety in levels that allow you to really maximize your movement ability to parkour your way through so many beautiful and well thought out environments. But what's interesting to me is that all of these concepts don't overstay their welcome. They're all unique to the individual level itself, and so you just get enough of it in order to really enjoy the experience without overkilling it. And what's unique about this is that Respawn Entertainment, how they went about developing the single player campaign for Titanfall 2 is they actually just did this in a game jam style. What this means is that they gave all of the developers like the Titanfall 2 stuff and we're just like, hey, you know, think up what you can and let's get some unique ideas going that could be really fun, and let's see what we can pull out of that. Essentially every single level is a breakdown of a bunch of little micro ideas of cool levels smashed together in order to make a cohesive level. Then you take all those levels and then you slap that plot on top of it, just enough to carry you through, and you get this experience going through all of these individual creative ideas that the Respawn Entertainment team had created. I genuinely cannot recall any other single player shooter campaign for one of these styles of games that has the level of uniqueness as Titanfall 2 is presenting you all at once. It's being extremely creative while being extremely meaningful. It's an exploration of so many wonderful ideas strung together into a campaign without excess or bloat. It doesn't overstay its welcome in its 5-hour-ish runtime. It took me about 5.5 hours to do, but I'm more than happy to play a shorter, well thought out creative game than one that is just stretched out way too long and then you're just kind of sitting there like, all right, well, we get this, let's move on to the next idea. While I can sing the praises about single player, I would be remiss if I did not talk about the multiplayer just a little bit. What made Titanfall and thus Titanfall 2 stand out from most of the other competitive shooters was all of the stuff that I had mentioned before, but it really just had the movement traversal be so integral to its gameplay. What they did for Titanfall 2 specifically is they increased the time to kill in order to make sure that when you're zipping around, nothing is as overwhelming and it feels like players are still able to get a grip on what is happening in all of this action that's going on. The levels are also built more vertically, which really is just to emphasize the mobility of the pilots and then leave that ground war to the Titans and all of the stalkers and the little bots running around, and as well as the NPCs, honestly, in this massive thing on the ground. And genuinely speaking, I think Titanfall 2 is the best version of any of those types of futuristic sci-fi multiplayer shooters that we have seen in just feeling like a very solid, fluid game. Once again, it's such a shame that this thing did not sell as well as they were hoping. And speaking about that, I mean, I've just gone on to sing the praises of Titanfall 2. I genuinely really enjoy the video game, but like, what happened? Why did this mostly go unnoticed back in 2016? And honestly speaking, it really just came down to the timing of when Titanfall 2 was released, as well as the atmosphere, the zeitgeist about multiplayer shooters at the time. Like I mentioned, Titanfall comes out, a lot of games start to try and bring into that futuristic sci-fi shooters. What we're seeing is this bloat of games that are all trying to do this future tech type of thing, with none of them really sticking the landing as well as Titanfall did. Then, just before Titanfall 2's release, literally 5 days before it comes out, Battlefield 1 comes out. And the Battlefield series had been having quite some trouble, and Battlefield 1 was really that game that brought Battlefield back. It reinvigorized the entire franchise. People were excited about Battlefield once again. And the fact that it took place in World War I helped it stand out amongst all of its other multiplayer competitors, and so people were more interested in Battlefield 1 at the time. Then Titanfall 2 comes out, but literally a week after that, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare launches. In a very similar vein and style to Titanfall, but is the obvious, more mainstream competitor. And already Infinite Warfare was met with a lot of criticism. A lot of people were just complaining about how COD had kind of lost its way in all of this futuristic sci-fi stuff that was kind of going on here. And so Titanfall was really sandwiched between these two games that were so diametrically different, one so beloved and one so hated on, that it more or less captured the entire internet's attention. Honestly, that war between Infinite Warfare as well as Battlefield 1 just completely cut Titanfall 2 out of the discussion. Sadly, Titanfall 2 completely flopped sales-wise, and it did not nearly reach the level of success Respawn were really hoping for. The bad release window honestly just doomed the game. I think if it was at a different time and not sandwiched in between these two games that literally came out a week before or a week afterwards, Titanfall 2 probably would have gotten a lot more attention behind it. All is not lost because, well, Respawn would go on to work on a little-known battle royale game called Apex Legends. And what's so interesting to me is, you know how I talked about the game jam thing where all the devs were thinking of unique ideas? One of the ideas that came out of it was a battle royale inspired by PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and well, that essentially turned into Apex Legends. And now, like, take a look at things. Apex Legends is one of the top live service multiplayer games that exists to this day. And of course, that would not be without Titanfall 2. And so while Titanfall 2 is that masterpiece that pretty much got forgotten in a lot of gamers' minds, it's good to see that its legacy does get continued forward into Apex Legends, and it's just such... It warms my heart, because this is such a game that was so well crafted. I didn't even play it until this year, and it's nice to see that it did lead to something, and the dev team just didn't give up after the poor sales of Titanfall 2. And that wraps up the story of Titanfall 2, the forgotten masterpiece. And you know what? Hey, if you see it on sale somewhere, go and play Titanfall 2. I would recommend buying it. You can get it on sale for like $5, and playing through the campaign alone, it really is something special, and I cannot, like, it is mind-blowing the first time you go through the actual campaign. But let me know down in the comments below. Did you play Titanfall 2? Were you a fan of the single player? Did you also find it at Dollarama? I would think it would be so funny if that was the zeitgeist of Titanfall 2 players, where they're like, oh yeah, I just like bought it on sale at Dollarama for like $3, and then I ended up loving the game. That would be crazy if that was actually the case. Thank you guys so much for watching, and who knows, maybe Titanfall, the project won't be abandoned yet. Respawn Entertainment clearly hold it very close to their hearts, and so in the future, maybe we'll get to Titanfall 3. Maybe we'll get some Titanfall related project. Here is to hoping. That's gonna wrap up this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this explanation of Titanfall and how, honestly, it is. I don't even want to say it's underrated. It just never got its time in the limelight. But have you ever wondered what the best HUD in gaming is? Well, I've got a video just about that. Spoiler alert, it's Dead Space. But you can check this out by clicking the link just on your screen right now to find out what makes Dead Space so special. The easiest example of this is when you hold up your weapon and aim down sight at enemies. Now the lasers are pointing out as Isaac is aiming it, but for the player it indicates where you are aiming in order to better orient your mouse or controller, whatever you're using, in order to